Canto 28. Summary. Dante and Beatrice are standing within the prima mobile, the ninth and final sphere that stands as a gate between the material universe and the spiritual universe of the Empyrean. In the previous canto, the pilgrim looked down through the material spheres to the earth far below. Now he returns his gaze to the eyes of his guide and sees something striking reflected in their beauty. He turns around to see an infinitesimally small point of light, so sharp and so brilliant he cannot long bear the sight of it. From the center, he sees 9 circles whirling at increasingly faster speeds the closer to the point they get. When he sees the slowest moving rings at the outside edge, he is full of questions, as the material universe he was just looking down upon functions in an opposite manner. The slowest spheres are closest to the center, and the faster spheres further away. Beatrice explains that he has moved from the copy to the original. The blinding point at the center is a spiritual and geometrical representation of God as the infinite, unbounded center of all things. Around him whirl the 9 orders of angelic intelligences, each dancing and flying as fast as their capacity for love allows. Beatrice unpacks this further, telling Dante how each ring of angels corresponds to a sphere in heaven, though in inverse fashion. In the material universe, the earth is at the center. There the sphere of the moon moves the slowest, as it is the heaven that is the furthest from the Empyrean. And in the material universe, the prima mobile moves the fastest, as it is nearest the Empyrean. In the spiritual universe, the true universe, according to Dante the poet, God, whose presence is the Empyrean, is represented at the center, as he is still fully present everywhere. And the intelligences that govern the various spheres of the material universe are pictured in their corresponding positions. From the center outward, represented in 3 triads or ternaries, are the seraphim, cherubim, and thrones, the dominations, virtues, and powers, the principalities, archangels, and angels. Here is implied the exact allocation of each intelligence with its corresponding sphere: seraphim with the prima mobile, cherubim with the starry sphere, thrones with Saturn, dominations with Jupiter, virtues with Mars, powers with the Sun, principalities with Venus, archangels with Mercury, and angels with the Moon. For a more detailed explanation of this hierarchical structuring, see the introduction. Dante the poet draws this hierarchy from the 6th century theologian known as Pseudo-Dionysius, who contemplated the ordering of these intelligences in his celestial hierarchies. Dionysius was believed by Dante and the scholars of his time to be the disciple of Paul, so named in Acts 17:34. As Beatrice says at the very end of the canto, it was understood that Paul, having seen the structure of these spheres when he ascended to the 3rd heaven, as related in 2 Corinthians 12:2-4, told his disciple Dionysius the correct order of angels. Gregory the Great, who differed from Dionysius in his ordering, found out later where he had gone wrong. Canto 28. Prima mobile. When she who imparadises my mind had opened up the truth that stands against the present life of unhappy mortals, as one beholds in a mirror the flame of a torch which is shining behind him before it was in sight or even in thought, and turns round to see if the glass speaks true, and sees that it harmonizes with it as a melody matches the meter. So my memory records, I became, gazing once more at the beautiful eyes, wherein love had made a noose to catch me. And as I turned around, my eyes were struck by what appears in that revolution whenever one rightly looks in its wheel. I saw a point that was shining a light so sharp that the vision on which it burns must close at its powerful clarity. And what here appears as the smallest star would seem like a moon if placed beside it, as when a star is placed next to a star. Perhaps as close as the halo appears, circling around the light that renders it when the vapor that bears it is thickest, so far round that point a circle of fire was wheeling so rapidly it surpassed that motion which quickest circles the world. And this was encircled by another, and that by a third, the third by a fourth, the fourth by a fifth, the fifth by a sixth. Above these followed a 7th, so broad in its width the messenger of Juno, made whole, would be too thin to contain it. So too the 8th and the 9th. and each one was moving slower corresponding to how far it was from the first in number. And the one least distant from the pure spark thus maintained the clearest flame, I believe, because it intruths itself most in it. My lady, who saw that I was engrossed with strong desire, said, "On that point depends the heavens and the whole of nature too. Upon that circle closest to it look and understand its motion is so swift, because a burning love has pierced it through." And I to her, "Were the universe placed in the order that I saw in these wheels, what has been offered would satisfy me. However, in the universe of sense, one can see that further from the center the wheelings become that much more divine. Wherefore, if my desire ought to obtain its end in this grand angelic temple, which has for borders only love and light, I need to hear once more how the model and the copy do not follow one form, for by myself I study it in vain. And if your fingers are not fit for such a knot as this, it is not unforeseen, for it is made so hard from not being tried." Thus my lady. Then she said, "Take what I will say to you, if you wish to be full, and sharpen your intelligence on it. These bodied spheres are either wide or thin, according to the virtue that is spread through all their sections, either more or less. For greater goodness makes for greater joy. More joy by greater bodies is contained if all their parts are equally complete. Wherefore the one that draws within itself the rest of all the cosmos corresponds to that first ring that loves and knows the most. And so, if you your measure wrap around the virtue of the substances themselves, and not their looks, which seems as spheres to you, then you will see a wondrous harmony between the great and more, the small and less, in every sphere to its intelligence." As the hemisphere of air remains clear and glistening, when Boreas blows forth from that cheek which is the more temperate, whereby the grimy haze that once obscured is purged and cleared, so that the heavens laugh with the beauties of all their parishes. In just this way did I, when my lady provided me with her precise answer, and as a star in heaven, truth was seen. And after her words had come to a rest, in no way different from iron sparkling when it is boiled, those circles shot forth sparks. Every spark kept within its burning band. They were so many, their number was more than the doubling and thousanded chessboard. I heard Hosanna sung from choir to the fixed point that keeps and will always keep them in place, where they always have been. And she who saw questioning thoughts arise in my mind said, "These first rings have revealed to you the seraphim and cherubim. So swiftly do they course within their bonds to be, as much as they can, like the point, and are, as much as their sight is sublime. Those other loves that round them go are called the thrones of the countenance divine, and therefore the first ternary is closed. You ought to know that they all take delight in how much their own sight can sink itself within the truth that quiets every mind. From here it can be seen how blessedness is founded in the act that sees, and not of that which loves, which follows after it. And the measure of their sight is their worth, which grace begets in them, and a righteous will, and so from grade to grade it thus proceeds. The other ternary that germinates as well within this everlasting spring, and which nocturnal Aries cannot spoil, unwinters without end in threefold strain, Hosanna, sounding forth in threefold ranks of happiness, where it threefolds itself. Within this order more divinities, the dominations first, the virtues next, and in this order powers are the third. Then in the last two bursts of joy, save one, both principalities and archangels wheel round, and last is all angelic sport. These orders set themselves to gaze above, and downward they so conquer, that toward God they each are drawn, and each the other draws. And Dionysius, with such desire to contemplate these orders, set himself, that he named and distinguished them as I. But Gregory then took another way, wherefore, as soon as his eyes opened here, within this heaven, at himself he laughed. And if such secret truths have been professed by men on earth, I would you marvel not, for he who saw it here above told him with many other truths about these wheels.